Hello, welcome to The Rational Live. I'm your host, David Dole. It's April 2nd, 2021. I'll get to the headline here in a minute. This is one of those stories that just broke, so a lot still coming in. There's been several updates to the initial story since it already hit, so I'll get to that in a second. Also, give you a little preview of the rest of the show today, including I'll discuss TransKidsHealth and what recently happened in Arkansas. I'll be discussing AOC being slammed by the left for comments on Biden's border. Also, tweets of the week, and Chuck Schumer tells you to get to work for his promise. So that and actually a lot more that I didn't properly prep because, so much happening right now in news and in my life that sometimes there's some stories that I just cannot break down properly, but I will share them later. And of course, I'll take your chats throughout the stream as well. And before I get to anything else, Patreon page is therationalnational.com/join. Links are below. There's Streamlabs link, a PayPal link, the Patreon link, many links. You can also join on YouTube, which helps as well. All right. If I seem out of breath, it's because I just had to get my son ready to go out for a walk with his mom. So I have no breath right now, but let's get to it. So this story just hit. I'm not going to give it a proper intro because this is just, this story live. This just happened. U.S. Capitol police officer was killed after someone rammed a vehicle into them. So this, I think, okay, this all started around, let me see here, 1:22 p.m. So this is the first thing I saw of it, this helicopter landing at the U.S. Capitol, which apparently is pretty rare.
I've never in my life seen this before. I've been up here a long time. Again, a helicopter landing on the east front of the Capitol.
All right, so that happened at 1:17 p.m. This was around the time that this whole incident happened. So to give you more detail here, this is an image from the scene. That's the car that rammed into the barrier at the Capitol. A U.S. Capitol officer was killed and another injured Friday after a suspect drove his vehicle into them, authorities said. After ramming his vehicle, the driver got out of the car and attacked one of the officers with a knife in hand and started to lunge toward officers, authorities said. He was then shot by at least one officer and later died of his injuries. Acting U.S. Capitol Police Chief Yogananda Pittman got emotional and paused before confirming one of our officers has succumbed to his injuries. So, I'm not going to play this because this video may get pulled from YouTube if I do. But there they are tending to who I believe is the officer on the ground that ultimately died. And as I said, this story keeps updating. In fact, if I refresh it now, there may be more to this. Because initially the story came out that the suspect was killed. And then and the fact that the officer died was not yet known. So there appears to be possibly more to this. As I said, this stream is not focused on this, so I'm not going to focus too much on this story. But if you want more on this, just check out this BuzzFeed article. They seem to be updating it on a regular basis. So, yeah. Check it out for more. Who knows? Obviously, it's way too early to know what the reasoning for this person doing this is, but nobody's in the right mind if you're driving into a barrier at the Capitol. I'm not really sure what the guy expected to happen. All right, let me get to now other stories that I want to discuss. All right. In a completely disgusting move, Arkansas has become the first state to ban access to gender-affirming care for transgender minors, including reversible puberty blockers and hormones. So first, more on this from Yahoo News. HB 1570, the Save Adolescents from Experimentation SAFE Act, just a ridiculous name, prohibits trans youth from accessing health care and insurance coverage for gender-affirming care. The bill passed 28-7 in the state Senate. The state House passed the bill earlier this month. The bill would prohibit doctors from offering gender-confirming hormone treatment or surgery to trans minors. Doctors would also be unable to refer minors to other providers for treatment. The legislation now goes to Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson's desk for signature. He has not publicly said whether he supports the legislation. The governor has 5 days, not including Sunday, to sign or veto the bill before it becomes law. If signed, the bill will become the first in the nation to target trans health care. It would take effect this summer. So I kept looking for updates on this. By the time this segment is cut out of the stream, this may already be signed. But we can, I think, safely assume it's going to be signed into law. This is a Republican governor. This did pass with a, large majority here. So I expect this to be passed. Now, this obviously the biggest impact this is going to have is it's going to increase suicide rates among trans youth, which already is a huge issue. More than half of transgender male teens who participated in the survey, this is a survey done by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So more than half of transgender male teens who participated in the survey reported attempting suicide in their lifetime, while 29.9% of transgender female teens said they attempted suicide. Among non-binary youth, 41.8% of respondents stated that they had attempted suicide at some point in their lives. So this isn't, considering, thinking, thought about suicide. This is actual attempted suicide. More than half of transgender male teens have attempted suicide. That's an insane number. And this is before these sorts of bills have popped up to make it even harder for trans youth to access healthcare. Many transgender young people experience family rejection, bullying, and harassment, or feel unsafe for simply being who they are, all of which can be added risk factors for suicide. And of course, you can add policy to this list. The fact that the entire public right now, in terms of the right wing and the GOP, have spent so much time attacking transgender individuals, transgender youth, and it's disgusting. Now, I want to read through this. So this is a thread that really goes into explaining, because look, if you're not into this, in this world, don't understand trans youth healthcare, it's very easy, very reactionary to think, if you're really young, you shouldn't be doing anything with, you shouldn't be engaging or taking puberty blockers, because that's going to impact you, later on in life. Well, as said in the initial report, it is reversible. Puberty blockers are reversible and used all the time, not just with trans youth. So I want to give you more context here so you fully understand what trans youth actually, it entails. So Montucky here has this great thread. I'll link to it below as well. Says, I cannot stress enough that puberty blockers have been used for decades to delay puberty in cisgender kids who experience precocious early puberty. They are only considered new, dangerous, and experimental when identical drugs are given to trans and gender-expansive kids. I cannot stress enough that puberty blockers are reversible. That's why we've given them to cis kids for decades. It's not HRT. It's not surgery. It's not mutilation. It's not transsexuality. It's just a way to stall when puberty hits before kids are ready. In fact, while I'm here, I'll mention that most medical elements of gender transition were invented for cis people. If you look at the side effects for a bottle of androgel, which is testosterone, they mostly just list stuff about prostates, LOL. It's only scary when trans people do it. Anyway, in legal and legislative sessions, anti-trans adults are making two arguments. One, puberty blockers are irreversible, which is simply false. Puberty is irreversible. People go off puberty blockers all the time. Myth number two, puberty blockers are a gateway drug to transsexuality. Again, cis children and adults use puberty blockers often and stay cis. If a kid goes on HRT after puberty blockers, it's not because of the puberty blockers, it's because they are trans. So it's important to understand, for others to understand who are not trans, who don't know anybody who's trans, who don't follow this, it's important for the average individual to understand what this is all about. This is about limiting the ability for people to be who they want to be, for people to simply live as they want to live. This is I think, a clear human rights violation, and we're going to continue seeing these sorts of bills pop up. This from NBC. This bill is one of two types of legislation being considered in more than 24 states. Measures that ban or restrict access to gender-affirming care for trans minors, and those that ban trans young people from competing in school sports teams of their gender identity. Governors in 3 states, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, have signed trans athlete bans into law. In addition to Arkansas, Alabama, and Tennessee are also advancing restrictions on gender-affirming care. Alabama Senate approved a bill that would make it a felony to provide care such as puberty blockers or hormones for trans minors, and a Tennessee House committee also just advanced a similar measure that includes misdemeanor criminal penalties. You have a bunch of people here who don't understand the healthcare aspect of this, don't care, are simply using this as a cultural issue to prop themselves up, to fearmonger, to create more, I guess, support for themselves within the right-wing conservative community who, again, either don't know, don't care, or are just horrible people to support this kind of legislation. Now, I want to leave you here with a resource. So I saw this posted by Hayden here, saying this is a Linktree website I made. It's called TransKids.Health. You can find organizations that desperately need resources to fight these laws in court, as well as materially providing for these kids through mutual aid. So this is a great site. Again, TransKids.Health, really easy link. You go there, and you have a bunch of links here. So you can donate to national organizations, see what's happening in specific states, and also donate to who needs help in groups in those states that are fighting these bills. And also, there's also a tracker here, so it tells you, what's happening right now in terms of trans health and LGBTQ rights in general. So, great resource. Again, TransKids.Health. Check it out if you want to do more. All right. I'm really out of breath right now. Man. Oh man, having a newborn sometimes. It's a lot of work. All right. Let me grab some chats here. Cool to see these rolling in again. Super chats help me out, as well as joining on YouTube or becoming a patron. Let me just open the separate page so I can read these properly. All right, here we go. Samantha Sider, thank you for your sticker, your thumbs up. Always a big supporter. Kelly Reed says, not such a good Friday, just seeing the news on Capitol Hill. Do we know anything about the driver? I'm so sad. As far as last I saw, we don't know anything about the driver. I'm sure that will come out at some point. Gina McGraw here, also always a big supporter, says, hi, David. I got my first Pfizer shot last Saturday, but besides a sore arm, I don't think it worked because I don't have an urge to buy Microsoft products. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are I'm jealous. I so wish I could get vaccinated. In Canada, I'm probably going to have to wait till about June based on how things are going. Maybe they'll get more before that, and I'll be able to, get my shot earlier. But the way things are rolling out so incredibly slowly, we're just now moving into phase 2, which includes some frontline workers. I think lowers the age to maybe 50, and still largely dealing with people who are at risk and at-risk groups, which is fine. They should do that. But I think above all, the first phase really should have dealt with frontline workers, because they're the ones that are often getting it and spreading it around. People that work in public-facing jobs or work in large warehouses, like at Amazon. There's a massive outbreak at an Amazon warehouse in Brampton, in Ontario, Canada, and those sorts of environments really help to facilitate the movement of the virus, and especially with these new variants that are incredibly powerful and contagious. It's so important to vaccinate people who are the most public facing, and so far Canada has done a horrible job, at least Ontario. It differs by province slightly, but in general though, we've done a pretty bad job at vaccinating, but we'll see if it gets better. Ryan Nowicki, also a regular supporter, says Denmark has no minimum wage but does really well due to union bargaining. Could improved union protections be better to push first versus minimum wage? Why not do both? That's always my approach. Why not do both? I don't think fighting for one takes away from the other. You have here the PRO Act, which I think I heard may try and be folded into the infrastructure package, but the PRO Act goes a long way to helping support unions, facilitate the creation, and also support them once they're created. I went through it all in a recent video, maybe 2 weeks ago, so you can go check that out for more details. But they have to do that, but at the same time, continue the push for the minimum wage. There's no reason why you can't do both. So that's my approach. All right. All right, taking a break there. Let me check. All right, I'm going to prep the next story. I will be right back. right, I'm back. People digging the royalty-free music I have. I feel like every week, new people are turned on to these tunes. Yes, Memory Rain. That is the one that plays during the Be Right Back breaks. The one at the beginning of my streams, if I can find that. Maybe I can find that. That one is called T_Rexed, REXED. If you search on YouTube, their YouTube music, I forget what it's called. It's royalty-free music on YouTube. They have a whole library there. If you search those names, you will find the songs if you want to listen to them separately. I think I found maybe the only two good royalty-free songs that exist. But that's not true. There's actually, several others. But they're pretty good. All right. Let me get to this next story. The conditions in migrant facilities at the U.S.-Mexican border right now are horrible. So to give you an example, this recent story from the Daily Beast, 500 migrant kids crammed into plastic pods meant for 32 people. And again, this is under Joe Biden. Now, recently, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez put out there's a video put out of her discussing the conditions at the border, and she is getting slammed by some on the left for apparently defending Joe Biden's border policy. So I'm going to play this quick clip for you. It was shared by The Hill, and I'll discuss it.
Now, the first thing I want to say is that the fact that this keeps happening over and over and over again is a political failure by both parties. And I want to be very clear about that, because I don't want to draw false equivalence. What is happening here is not the same as what happened during the Trump administration, where they took babies out of the arms of their mothers and deported their families and permanently traumatized these children, some of whom we don't know will ever be reunified with their family again, which is a level of human rights violation that is just simply not the same. Both of these things are barbaric and they're wrong. But when you rip a baby out of the hands of a mother, you cannot draw the same comparison. And anyone who is trying to do that is doing a profound disservice to the cause of justice. So I don't want to excuse any of this, but I don't think we should also get them twisted together, because one is not the same. And we cannot dust that under the rug. And by the way, those families are owed reparations, period.
All right. So this is the way it's posted here. I mean, you see some of the over 4,500 quote tweets. So this got quite a reaction online, because most people are taking this simply out of context for, the simple fact that this clip was taken out of context. This is a minute and a half. The larger clip, so this was pulled from this Forbes discussion, 13 minutes long. The other 12 minutes of this video is AOC discussing the horrible conditions at the border under Joe Biden. The title of the video, literally, it's AOC rips Biden over barbaric conditions at the border. That's what the video is actually about. That's the 12 minutes that are not shown in that other clip. So people take it out of context, think she's, putting out a singular video, a minute and a half to defend Joe Biden. That's not at all what's going on here. But then some will say, okay, well then why even make the comparison? Why even make the comparison? It makes Biden's border policy seem okay when compared to Trump when you make that comparison. This is why. You don't have to convince leftists that the situation at the border under Joe Biden for migrants is bad right now. She doesn't have to convince me. She doesn't have to convince most of you. So who is this message actually for? This is for liberals who knee-jerk want to defend Joe Biden. So when communicating with people like that, this is this is why she has to make that comparison, because then it brings those liberals into her larger argument that's critical of Joe Biden. So this really is about communication, how you communicate to people who don't normally agree with you. You have to win them over with something they agree with. Hey, yes, I agree. The situation's different. I think Trump's Trump ripping kids from mothers' arms is horrible. And then, so she brings that up, but then folds that into a larger discussion about how what Joe Biden is doing is horrible. The way you win people over in arguments like this is you have to speak their language. So AOC here, again, understanding the audience for this. The audience is not the left, because the left does not have to be convinced of this. The audience are liberals defending Biden. The audience here, the terms that she is using, the way that she is describing this, the way that she brings in what happened under Trump, is a way to convince liberals that what is happening under Joe Biden is something worth paying attention to and bad. You don't do that by just going out there guns blazing and just shitting on Joe Biden, without actually giving any context or without making it at least appear like you were on the side of the people you were trying to convince. So this is all about communication. That's half of her job, at least, because when you're in a minority position the way she is, yes, as I've discussed before, the Progressive Caucus in the House has power now. They can withhold their vote on specific bills to make those bills better. They could have done that when it came to improving the COVID relief to put the wage increase back in. Ultimately, the most charitable reason why they didn't do that is because they understood the urgency to get COVID relief passed. But now, with the infrastructure bill coming up, they don't have that excuse. There is no urgency for infrastructure. I mean, there is, but not in the same way there was for the COVID relief bill. So we'll see if they are going to, put their money where their mouth is and actually use their power to withhold the vote on the infrastructure plan to improve that. It's this is a different discussion now, but 2.25 trillion over 8 years is nothing. So we'll see if they use their power there. But the other half of her job is communicating. And to be a good communicator, you have to understand your audience. You have to understand how to speak their language. You have to understand how to change their minds. And part of doing that is relating to them. And part of a way to relate to them is to bring up how terrible Trump is. You do that, and then you fold in a criticism of Joe Biden. You win more of those liberals over to your side because you took the time to actually understand how to speak to those people. All right. There we go. I think I over-explained that enough. But this is something I will do as well, depending on what the topic is. If I know, hey, this video is going to be an MSNBC clip, or actually more specifically, a clip about The View. I will use The View because people that watch those clips often are people that watch The View. I know because I have many followers now that saw me first because they watched a clip that I did on Meghan McCain. So I will use a clip like that, speak their language by bringing them in with that View clip, and then reel them into a discussion about wealth inequality, about generational wealth, about privilege, about American dynasties, and that then informs those individuals who would not know otherwise about those topics if they didn't click on that video. And the only reason they clicked on that video is because I discussed Meghan McCain. So when I see people complain, and I do less of those videos now. I actually maybe should get back to doing more of them. But when I see people complain in the comments on videos, why are you covering The View? It's because if you want to grow this movement, inform more people, you have to understand how to speak their language. You have to go where they are. Where they are is loving Joe Biden or watching The View. So if you reel them in with things that they care about or understand, then you can better educate them on what you want to educate them on. So anyways, that's a whole other discussion that I could talk a lot more about, but let me move on to tweets of the week. I've actually got several here. Many of them could have been their own stories, but let me prep these links. And actually, first, are there more chats? If there are, I'll take those. Otherwise, I'll go on break. There are more chats. All right. Christopher Cotton sends me a super sticker. Thank you so much, Christopher. Snow White says, great. Wait, did I see this one? Snow White says, great show, David. I'm so glad I caught you live. Thank you, Snow White. I'm glad you're here. The Luisi Lala, I'm sure I said, no, Luisi, I don't know how you say your name, sorry. But says, hey, David, I don't know if you care about sports, but the MLB moved its All-Star game and draft from Atlanta in response to the voting bill in Georgia. Interesting. Good. I mean, I'm happy to see moves like that. It definitely doesn't hurt. Rhino says, do you think Jimmy Dore is too hard on AOC? Honestly, I don't really watch Jimmy Dore, so I don't know. I'm not sure what he's saying anymore. I think it's important not to get stuck in just talking to the same people over and over again. Like what I try to do here is I try to bring in different audiences. I try to inform people that may not be informed on these issues. And I think I do a pretty good job at doing that. So I mean, while I don't see any other reason to do this work unless you want to inform people. I mean, that's why I do this, to inform people. So if I'm just talking to the same audience over and over again, using their rhetoric, just, hitting that dopamine for my audience. I mean, I guess that's one way to do this, but if you want to inform more people, bring more people in, change minds, I think you have to understand you need to take a more measured approach, a more objective approach. At the same time, look, everybody has their own avenues, their own thing. So different people do it in different ways, and who am I to judge? If maybe he is changing minds. I don't know. I think the stuff he did years ago was a lot better. I think he's recently got a little off the deep end, but that's my opinion. Maybe he's still changing minds. I don't know about it. All right. Let me prep the next story. I will be right back. All right, I am back. A lot of comments on the hair. Thank you, I think, if they're positive. If they're not positive, also thank you. I welcome all comments on the hair. To be honest with you, I would love to cut my hair right now, but we're now in another shutdown in this province. I'm not cutting my hair until I'm vaccinated. Bottom line, I'm not sitting in front of somebody's face for that long, for like 30 minutes to get a haircut and get COVID at the same time. Not happening. So I will wait till I'm vaccinated. So who knows how long this hair will get if I have to wait till June. But it's also not going to be as short as it used to be. Anyways, not that anybody actually cares. Let me get to my tweets of the week. So I'm reading comments on the page, and some of them are interesting. Nice to hear you bring up MNT in a recent video. I don't really see it covered anywhere. Currently reading The Deficit Myth on all on the subject. Yes, I've been reading The Deficit Myth for, I think, 3 months now. I'm horrible at finishing books. But yes, Stephanie Kelton is fantastic communicator on MMT. Check it out. It was important to bring that up. I often try, not that I don't try to bring it up, but I often don't bring it up because it requires an entire explanation. But I did bring it up in a recent video over Biden's infrastructure plan because it's tied to raising the corporate tax rate, and they're not even raising it to where it used to be under Obama. But so I brought it up just to make the point that you don't need taxes to pay for investment into infrastructure. But it is important to, remind yourself every now and then of how the entire discourse around spending in politics, regardless of, country at this point, Canada, we have the exact same discussions. It's just so backwards. It's not actually based on any sort of reality. The government does not operate the same way your household, income works. They're completely different things. But again, this is a different discussion. All right. Let's get to this. It is time once again for tweets of the week. These are the tweets that I collect over the course of the week that I think are worth sharing. You may learn something from them, or you may just laugh. Let me start with this. CBS News reporting, minimum wage would be $44 today if it grew at the same pace as Wall Street bonuses. This is just a great fact. I guess I could have done a whole story on this, but this in itself just really helps to contextualize how low the minimum wage is and how many and who has benefited over especially the last 30 years, last 40 years at this point, under neoliberal policy. It's been all the wealth's been generated to the top 10%, while people at the bottom losing, and figures like this help you understand that context. Colleen here tweeted out, so let me get this straight. Conservatives don't think a 17-year-old is old enough to vote in this country, but they think they're close enough to 18 to consent to sexual relationships with a person 20 years their senior, and they're the ones to save the children. This, of course, is over the whole Matt Gaetz saga that just keeps evolving. Of course, many are defending Matt Gaetz. Many also, to be fair, that are on the right are not defending him, but many are defending him, and yeah. Anyways, the point here is made. This, again on Matt Gaetz, I saw this morning and just laughed. Let us never forget this hero. This is posted by Mary Joy. So here, one of the many weird things Matt Gaetz did is kept going to schools and talking to kids. I'm sure, look, in a vacuum, if he was not a creeper, I'm sure it would seem perfectly fine for a politician to go to schools and talk to classes and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of images and weird captions that go with them of him doing this. But this is just amazing. You see here, the girl at the corner with the middle finger. Brilliant. I love it. All right, next one. Yusuf here tweeting out, recent Gallup poll shows majority of U.S. Dems, 53% for first time, want more pressure on Israel. But what is really interesting is the trend. To climb from 33% to 43%, it took 10 years. To climb from 43% to 53%, it took just 3 years. Democrats in America are becoming more and more and more informed on this issue. And part of the reason as well, I think, is just many youth are more involved in politics and understand this issue a lot better, definitely, than older generations tend to. So you see here, fairly rapid increase considering the slow growth in those first 10 years. So incredible. And I only imagine as more and more people become aware of the human rights violations by the Israeli government, more and more people will be aware of how important it is to pay attention to this story and inform others. Next one here. Amber tweets out, U.S. congressmen have been convicted for sexual assault more U.S. congressmen have been convicted for sexual assault in a public bathroom than trans people. I never even thought about this until I saw this tweet, but yeah, of course. And Apparently this is the source for that. But I guess we got to ban U.S. congressmen from public washrooms. Only makes sense. Yeah. Next story or tweet. Sandy Hudson here tweeting out. So in response, I guess I should read this first. Joshua Potash here saying New York just legalized weed and is expunging the sentences for people convicted in the past. This is huge. In fact, people are celebrating outside my apartment as we speak. Sandy here replying saying, a logic Canada lacks. Why hasn't Canada committed to expunge these sentences? Trudeau has had years to do it. This is something that I'm not sure many Americans even realize. When we legalized marijuana, we did not expunge all past records dealing with marijuana, which is completely insane. You're seeing this regularly. When marijuana is legalized in various states, almost always it's tied to expunging sentences of people convicted in the past. But in Canada, it hasn't been. So oftentimes I will use Canada to be like, hey, look, America, you could do this a little better. But whether it's vaccines or this, there are at least a couple examples where America is doing much better than Canada. This from Andrea, who's a YouTube creator, saying, hi, Team YouTube. My video live stream of Trump's speech on January 6th was just removed from YouTube for spam/scams and promoting that Trump had won the 2020 election when the entire video is just his speech with me pointing out his lies about the election. YouTube is doing this all the time. Similar actions have been taken against the Serfs, the Cavernacle, which is a British YouTube channel. YouTube takes content where there is right-wing lies being spoken and debunked in the same video, but just isolates it as if these channels are promoting that hateful or lying content. It is crazy to me that if these were actually human reviews, which YouTube claims they are, that these are human reviewers doing this, but if they actually were, it's very clear what these channels are doing. And oftentimes it takes a lot of public pressure. I mean, I retweeted this, but, I'm one person. It takes a lot of public pressure on Twitter or elsewhere for YouTube to actually revisit these sorts of decisions and reverse them. But this one was just complete bullshit. Check out... Here it is. Check out Cyberdemon's page, Cyberdemon531. She's hilarious. I watch plenty of these videos. I think one of the funniest people on YouTube right now that does politics. Check Andrea out. Fantastic stuff. And I believe... Is there one more? No, that's it. Those are the tweets of the week. All right. There we go. Again, definitely... check out Cyberdemon. Every time I've watched a clip, I have laughed. She is hilarious. All right. Anyways, let me get to the next story. But before I do that, let me just double check, see if we got some chats in or not. And I'll move on. Here we go. Adrian Thomas says, not sure if you missed this, but in Normie Chat, a handful of people commented on how long and good your hair is looking. Just thought you should know. Adrian, thank you. I saw some of the chats. Very kind. I'm sure there are many others saying, what the hell are you doing? Why is your hair this long? Which is also very fair. But thank you, Adrian. Radzoso, always a solid supporter, says the Anna Kasparian interview of Stephanie Kelton on TYT Conversations did a good job of explaining MMT. Yeah, I've seen a number. I may have even watched that. I'm not sure how old it is, but I've seen a number of interviews with Stephanie Kelton. You could just, Google Stephanie Kelton's name, whether she's explaining MMT herself or it's in a discussion. Check out that interview with Anna Kasparian. She's clearly, Stephanie Kelton's the person that I know that communicates MMT better than anybody else. Jessica McKenzie says, "Hi, David. Have you seen the video of Ted Cruz at the migrant facility defending Trump and acting like he cares? Thanks so much for your informative, interesting, and intelligent view on politics." Thank you, Jessica. I have not seen that video. I often completely ignore Ted Cruz unless something really goes viral, and I have like the trip to Mexico. I can't stand his voice. I can't stand anything about Ted Cruz. He is so phony. He just oozes with phoniness that it's hard for me to stomach him. And it's one of those things too where it's just, isn't it obvious this guy is so full of shit all the time? Like, does it really need explaining for me to show you that he's full of shit? I mean, I could play that video and talk about it, but I feel like the video itself of Ted Cruz should just be obvious enough that this guy is just completely dishonest. He's such a phony person. I don't know how anybody can go to a voting booth and vote for that man. And, you know, maybe they do because of the policy, but do they do it while liking Ted Cruz? Does anybody actually like Ted Cruz? Even if they vote for him, support him, do they actually like him? Is it possible to actually like Ted Cruz? If it is, I don't understand. Something has to be wrong with you, because that guy is just completely, obviously a phony. All right. It's enough on Ted Cruz. Let me do this next story. Okay. This one I kind of haphazardly put together because, again, I've had a busy day today, but hopefully I can turn this into something. And then I got a bunch of other stories that I did not properly, or I did not have the time to break down. And I will discuss those. So this really doesn't require too much prep. Senate Majority Leader blah 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 again. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is spending a lot of his time pretending to care about progressive policy, like raising the minimum wage, yet didn't whip the votes to actually get it through, or canceling student debt. On that note, on canceling student debt, here is what he recently said. Now, AOC, who I support, has also done something similar with her language in a situation like this. So I'm going to be completely fair here and objectively criticize how absurd this claim or desire is. Check this out. Claim really was the wrong term, but whatever. It's too late now. Not doing the intro over.
So people, folks listening, whether you have the debt, have a friend who has the debt, believe it's the right thing, we're asking you, email, call, write President Joseph Robinette Biden and tell him you want this done. We're trying to get as many people to contact the White House as possible. And frankly, we told this to Joe Biden. And he said, go ahead, let it rip. So let's show him what kind of support there is out there for this great plan that Elizabeth, Bob, and I, and many, many others are pushing. Let's get this done.
Okay. As I said, AOC also did something similar. I forget what the issue was, but basically said, you know, it's time to organize. Now, saying it offhandedly, whatever, because they're right. Public pressure is necessary. But these are public servants. They have connections. They can connect to unions, progressive groups, do the actual work to facilitate organizing through those various channels. To just put the message out to say, time for you to put pressure on us, that is not going to do anything. And it's also, it's setting people up for failure. So look, maybe I'm not being charitable. Maybe Chuck Schumer is working really hard behind the scenes to get whoever it is, progressive groups, student groups, unions on board to try and push Joe Biden to cancel student debt. Maybe he's putting that work in, but I highly doubt it. Chuck Schumer right now is basically trying to change to be somebody who is more in line with what his state actually is, which is progressive. He is in New York State, and he is an incredibly conservative Democrat to be a senator in New York State. So I think he's beginning to realize that with people like AOC, Jamal Bowman, and others in the state that have been winning these elections. He knows he has to rebrand. So he's been pushing things like the like student debt cancellation by trying to make it, making himself seem like he's this guy fighting for these issues when he's had no history of doing that. And if he actually wanted to get something done, let's say the wage increase, then he should have worked to whip the votes from people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, which he did not do. Now, ultimately, the bigger issue in that scenario was Joe Biden. I really think Democrats that voted against the wage increase were basically covering for Joe Biden. But Chuck Schumer, part of his job is to get people on board with passing his agenda. So if he actually cared enough to pass his agenda, to pass this progressive agenda, the progressive things that he wants, then he would work to do that. Now, yes, canceling student debt can be done by Joe Biden alone. It can be an executive order, so he doesn't need the Senate to do that. But it's just, I guess what matters here is the full context. Because again, if he was doing this, if this was just one of the ways he was utilizing pressure to get Joe Biden to do this, that would be fine. But I haven't seen any other plan from Chuck Schumer. I haven't heard any other reports of what he's actually doing behind the scenes to get Joe Biden on board with this. It's basically, hey guys, show Joe Biden you really want to cancel student debt. All right. It's not how it's done. Again, they have connections. They can organize themselves with those connections. And so far, we have not seen Chuck Schumer do that. All right. That segment was okay. It was okay. It was okay. It was fine. Nothing special. All right. A lot of stories here that I did not ultimately break it down. But before I do any of that, and I'll take your chats throughout as well, including the normie chat. Those, of course, will be random. But Junie McGraw here, incredible supporter, says, have you seen of Bill C-273, Canada's version of UBI, and could you make a video about it? I may have heard something. It's ringing a bell. The UBI aspect of this is ringing a bell. I'll look more into it. I just don't. When I know something's not going to pass, less of a reason I feel to cover. Liberals are not passing a UBI. It's not happening. So unless government changes and somehow Jagmeet Singh and the NDP jump into power, and even then I don't think they would pass it. NDP, I have many criticisms right now. Like, my issue with the NDP, I think they're under bad leadership. I think Jagmeet Singh is listening too much to the neoliberals around him, and really is not being bold enough. I mean, he just promised to cancel a little bit of student debt. Then you had the Green Party, who I've also been critical of, come out to say we're going to cancel all student debt. Why not be bold? Knowing you're likely going to lose anyways, might as well gain some more supporters, get people on board, and be bold. And ultimately, when you fight for something that is so tiny, oftentimes you have to whittle down your proposals anyways to get something through. Why not start with more than what you want? So then, if you are forced to capitulate a little bit, you at least capitulate to a position that is more favorable to you. But to start with such a low bar and then try and meet that bar, I just don't know what it accomplishes. But anyways, to get back to the UBI, I will look more into it. I just don't think there's any hope right now of that happening. Alma says, I love the progressive Jesus look. It's not intentional, I can tell you that. Not on purpose. Okay. Wow, the chat is flying on the side. And it's slower on screen. What's happening here? I think only certain chats are showing up here. But let me see if I can grab some others before I get to the next story that I did not properly prep. All right. Anyways, too much here. It's so hard for me to to engage with the normie chat when it's going a mile a minute. Now it's slowing down. Here we go. Oha says UBI is dumb anyways. We need society to redistribute wealth from where it begins. This just calls to be mismanaged and then taken away in the future if it even comes into fruition. I think this is also a great point. It's very important to understand, if UBI is something you want, that it cannot be a replacement for the safety net, for the welfare state. You can't have UBI as a replacement for that sort of help. It has to be in addition to what already exists. Because oftentimes UBI is supported by libertarians who view it as a replacement for, say, disability, or a replacement for, say, universal health care or anything else. And that's clearly not the way you want to go. So UBI has to be in addition to Social Security, in addition to in addition to disability, and in addition to the safety net that already exists. So it's very important to see who is pushing it, what their priorities are, how they discuss it, because it is something that can be a negative if later on down the line it's used as an excuse to cut support to other areas of the economy or in certain individuals and groups. So I just think it's important to be aware of that. Anyways, I think I got some new chats coming in. Hold up. Mama Bear Dragon says, I've almost forgotten what you look like with short hair. The Disney Prince hair suits you. Go back and watch some old videos. You will quickly see. Lee says, off topic, we need a new independent media channel. YouTube algorithm constantly throws me back to the corporate media wolves. What to do? I wish there was another way. It's hard to compete with Google. That's the problem. That's what we're faced with. And when you do have a rival, like I guess Twitch kind of is, but it's mostly focused on live streaming. It's owned by Amazon, so there's no escaping right now. Anyways, this insanity, and we are slaves essentially to the algorithm. It doesn't impact my content. I constantly cover stuff that gets demonetized. Like I will cover shootings. I'll cover anything involving the police. And that stuff all gets demonetized. What bothers me ultimately more than anything else is the fact that those same videos get deplatformed as well. So there's less likely to be suggested to people that are on YouTube. Because I put out enough videos where, one or two videos being demonetized isn't really a big deal to me. The bigger deal is the fact that I want people to actually see the content I'm putting out. If I'm being critical of the police, I want people to see that video, understand my argument, because I want to help change minds. I want people to see that. I want people that wouldn't normally, click on my channel to see that video when they're out watching, say, a CNN clip or something. And our videos are almost, if not never, just never suggested to people outside of the people that you're already subscribed to. So if you're subscribed to me, maybe I'll show up in a suggested video on someone else's channel. But even then, if you're watching YouTube videos and you're watching political content, watching my content, oftentimes, almost always, the video that comes up next after me will be CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times or the Washington Post, somebody that is considered an authoritative source according to YouTube. Authoritative source essentially meaning corporate-aligned media. They did this, and this is public. This is public knowledge. This isn't like, conspiracy speculation. They said publicly a couple of years ago that they are prioritizing authoritative sources over independent media creators. Basically turning YouTube back into cable television. I mean, the whole point of YouTube was to get away from that media sphere. And now they're just funneling people back into CNN, MSNBC, and the like. So it is incredibly frustrating knowing that our channels, whether it's mine, whether it's Mike Figueredo, whether it's Christo, whether it's Secular Talk, whoever it is, that our channels would be so much larger if they weren't impacted by a YouTube algorithm that is consistently pushing back against us. It is so frustrating to know that, because you can see if you watch, or if you go on Social Blade, it shows you, I think socialblade.com. You can look up any channel. It shows you the growth of that channel over time. You can see how chaotic it is. Like, they're up and down. They create, like, there's big spikes and then there's nothing happening. It's clearly manufactured by the algorithm. Whatever the algorithm's doing that day or that month, that's what's impacting the content that people are seeing. So we have been completely, shut down by the algorithm. Our growth has been shut down by the algorithm, and it's really been a problem. But anyways, I don't want to sit here complaining all day. Let me go to some other content here that I prepped. And yes, I'll get to, I think I heard another chat come in, or maybe somebody joined. Oh, more chats. All right, let me grab these first, and then I'll get to more content. Victoria B says, I think we should do a sizable one-time wealth tax on the uber rich to pay for pandemic, and then bring in an inheritance tax back to Canada. Thoughts? I'm down with that idea. I saw that very idea raised by Nate Erskine Smith, who is a liberal, but one of the more progressive liberals. He often actually votes with the NDP when it comes to certain bills or whatever. At the same time, why not a consistent wealth tax? So I'm down with a one-time wealth tax for the pandemic specifically, but keep it going. Why stop there? So that's, again, my thoughts on this is all the above. Do both. Lee says, I dumped corporate media a long time ago for a reason, and switched to YB. Any entrepreneurs to create another media platform? It's not that easy, guys. Many have tried. I stopped jumping onto other, or putting my content up on new platforms when there was one that went down like 2 years ago, I think. And I was putting up content on that regularly, like YouTube, and I would put it up on this channel that, it's funny, I forget the name now because it was so long ago, but it didn't go anywhere. If you're independent in this space, I mean, YouTube has been around forever. You're not going to compete with YouTube. If there's some way to form, a creators union, if that's possible, if we can somehow withhold our videos and have YouTube bend to our demands, then that would be something to explore. But I don't know how possible that really is. So I don't know. I hope there's another way, but really doesn't seem to be a way out at this point. But that's also why I always keep up my Twitch account, because in case of an emergency, if I got to pull the chute, I'll just jump over to Twitch until they do something, and then who knows where I go. Anyways, trailing off here. Let me get to some stories finally. So I saw this week. 21 hand sanitizers found to have high levels of cancer-causing chemicals. Now, let me read a bit here. So, a new study by Valasur, an independent lab that assesses drug product quality, found dangerous levels of benzene in 21 of 260 batches of hand sanitizer. In a survey of 168 different brands, benzene levels exceeded the Food and Drug Administration's temporary limit on the amount of chemical permitted in hand sanitizers, or 2 ppm. These findings are alarming and reveal a serious potential risk to public health, for which Valasur requests expeditious action from the FDA to properly address. So, benzene is a carcinogen, a cancer-causing chemical, and previous studies have found that there is probably no safe level of exposure for people. So, that's pretty crazy. I'm not sure if there's a list of these chemicals. If you want more on this, look up Valasur and hand sanitizer, and maybe there's a list, but yeah. Going from COVID to cancer, not exactly what people I'm sure had in mind when they bought hand sanitizer. But also understand, often it takes prolonged exposure to these sorts of chemicals for it to actually have any effect. So you're probably fine. But just to be aware, if you're going to buy hand sanitizer, avoid some of the maybe lesser known ones. Apparently Purell is fine. So that's an uncontaminated sanitizer. So if you're buying Purell, you're fine. But and I imagine most are fine. But yeah, if you can find a full list, if you want more on this, I'm sure you can find a full list and avoid those. Let me see what else popped up this week. So I was this close to doing a story on this, but I figured I already did a story on the Amazon stuff. I didn't know if it really made sense for me to do another one on essentially the same story. But after my last story on Amazon and Twitter accounts, Ken Klippenstein here with he's been scooping all over the place when it comes to Amazon stories. Amazon's paid Twitter army was handpicked for their great sense of humor under a program codenamed Veritas. Project Veritas? Internal company documents leaked to me reveal. So the larger piece in the Intercept has so many details, including how Bernie was specifically mentioned in their training pamphlet, which maybe I'll pull that up in a second. But also, yes, of course, keep Ken Klippenstein employed. He's been doing an incredible job. I have more links here. Let me see. So this is it'll be hard to zoom in here. But somewhere in this piece, Bernie Sanders is mentioned. Actually, if I go here and I do this, maybe we can zoom in a little more. So let's see here. So basically, there are, just to be clear, there are paid people that work at Amazon who are paid to be online and responding to whatever story is out there, being critical of Amazon. And part of their training package here, this is the training package, includes how to reply to Bernie Sanders. And they actually had people, what they would do is they would put out certain tweets and then have these people in a private setting, not public, but in their training, privately reply to whatever example they were given as part of their training to see if they were ready to, for the big time, to be public. And, most of these accounts have very little followers. But then they would be active on Twitter, replying to any criticism of Amazon. So here they used one where, example post, Bernie Sanders interviewing Seth King on Prime Day. Seth describes feeling so depressed working at Amazon, he wanted to take his own life. So in their training, these are the various replies they had. Carol said, "Not every job is suited for everybody. Sorry he had such a bad experience. His experience was so much different than my own." Shelly here says, "This job has never made me feel bad personally. If you have a job that makes you feel bad, you could leave." Yeah, very easy, very easy to tell someone to leave their job. This one here, there are plenty of hardworking people who don't feel exploited. So this is part of their training here. There's other examples of them bringing up Bernie Sanders. It's just amazing. And like, these are some of the accounts. Did this actually work on anybody? Like, if they actually wanted to maybe put out propaganda that would be successful, I think what they would do is pretend to not work at Amazon, pretend to be an average individual who is not tainted by the fact that they work for the company, and instead, make their arguments from that angle. But to have these accounts that basically all looked the same, they all had the same headings. I think this is the same person here, but from reading through the story, they had very similar profile pictures. So I think they all had the Amazon logo either in the heading or in their image. They all had a certain naming convention, so they were all named a certain way. I mean, essentially making it look like a bot army. Now, apparently they were not bots. They were real people behind the accounts. But it doesn't help your case. Maybe I shouldn't be giving Amazon tips here, but it doesn't help your case to appear as a bot army. But that's what they did. So it is just incredible. I understand, I guess, if you're somebody as sheltered as Jeff Bezos is, you may think this would work. There's no way this worked. I think this only made things worse. But anyways, an incredible story here from Ken Klippenstein. Let me see if there's... I know I saved some more links here. So here... He says Amazon's Twitter ambassadors are handpicked to do sassy clapbacks and speak your truth, but are prohibited from responding to tweets about labor union rights per internal company documents leaked to me. Yeah, so this is the other part of the piece where there are certain topics they can't talk about. So one of those issues are labor rights. So they're told to avoid that altogether. Pretty funny. I mean, if they had some good arguments, maybe they'd be allowed to talk about that stuff. But clearly, being against workers having their own rights, having their own voice in a workplace, not a very popular position to be against that. And of course, I also could have covered this week, but it would have been a lot of Amazon and Twitter stories. Jay Carney used to be press secretary for Obama, now a senior vice president at Amazon, tweeted out, "With all due respect, Senator Bernie Sanders, you're wrong on this. We treat our employees with dignity and respect. We offer a $15 an hour minimum wage, healthcare from day one, and a safe, inclusive workplace." Now, I am so tired of hearing Amazon executives talk about how generous they are for offering $15 an hour. As I said in the reply here to Jay Carney, stop claiming that $15 an hour is some generous wage for warehouse work when you know that's lowballing how much warehouse workers are typically paid. I covered this in one of my recent stories on Amazon. $15 an hour is low for warehouse work. When I was looking for a job, I think 15 years ago now, I'm an old guy, 15 years ago, I was looking at warehouse jobs, and they were paying $17, $18, $19 an hour to start. And by the way, this is in Canada, where I also already had healthcare guaranteed to me. So, and that's anecdotal, but separate from being anecdotal, it's also, the actual reality that it undercuts warehouse work. So this article from Vice says that in that December 2020 article, Bloomberg reported on how new Amazon warehouses drag down wages in the local area, even though the company is paying more than the minimum wage. In New Jersey, for example, warehouse workers were making $24 an hour before Amazon moved in, paying $15 an hour. In 2019, warehouse workers in New Jersey earned about $17.50 per hour. In 68 countries where Amazon that's counties, by the way, that's a typo. In 68 counties where Amazon has opened one of its largest facilities, Bloomberg notes average industry compensation slips by more than 6% during the facility's first 2 years. So when Amazon moves into a county, compensation in that industry goes down by more than 6 points. So shows you the actual impact on workers, the actual impact that Amazon has on workers is negative. So they'll talk a big game because the reality is people are so underpaid that $15 an hour for warehouse work may seem like a lot, when in reality, in that industry, it is low. But this, and of course, he was. I'm not sure if it shows the replies anymore, but you could tell by this one. I mean, just completely ratioed. I don't know how this helps them. But they're out here doing this because Jeff Bezos, this was also reported, I think, by Ken Klippenstein, Jeff Bezos reportedly told his executives to go out there and push back against the sentiment that Amazon is a bad company to work for. So you had people like Jay Carney, you had Dave Clark, I think was the other guy's name, and the Amazon News, the official Amazon News Twitter account, all go out there, push back against these very fair criticisms based on facts, push back, and then just get absolutely annihilated online because of how wrong they are. I'm not sure if they're going to continue this sort of outreach, if that's what you want to call it, but clearly I don't think it is. It's really helping them. All right, let's see what else we got here. More chats. Let me grab those. Let me get off the screen. Here we go. Where am I? Cami Ye says, love your content and want to thank you and wish you the best. My question, will Medicare for All or universal health care actually happen in my lifetime? Well, I don't know how old you are, but depending, if you're really young, maybe. I actually do think it's going to happen. Public perception has already been there for a while now. The vast majority of people want a universal Medicare for all system. It's just going to take the right leadership and enough people being primaried out of their spots in Congress to get it done. So, that sounds like a lot, but think of how far the conversation has moved in just 4 years. Bernie Sanders basically mainstreamed Medicare for all when he ran the first time in 2016. If you go back, I'm not sure how many of you are new to following, what's going on in the world. But Medicare for all was not anything that was ever brought up prior to 2015. Never brought up. Bernie Sanders made it an issue, basically. And then you think about the primaries, like AOC, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, others that have come in and clearly have changed the conversation when it comes to Democratic priorities. Now, can they do more? Yes, of course. As I've discussed a million times, they can use their power to block bills to make those bills better. They could have did that with the COVID relief package. They could do with the infrastructure package. We will see if they use their power. There's about 20 of them in the House. The Progressive Caucus is an actual, no, I shouldn't say actual, but it is a better, more improved Progressive Caucus than where it was before. They have the ability to withhold their votes, stop bills. Nothing's going to get passed if they don't support it, because the GOP ain't voting on for anything Democratic. So they have the power to stop something, to make it better, and make it more progressive. Will they do that? I don't know, but they can. That's one way for them to use their power right now. But as I got off on a tangent there, but think of how far we've come. The conversation will continue evolving. More and more people will continue primarying out these more corporate politicians, and I do think you will get to a place where, yes, Medicare for all, single payer will at some point in your lifetime get passed. I would give it a time frame, but I don't want to get that specific. I do think, let's say within the next 20 years. I think within the next 20 years, it's going to happen. 20 years is a long time. And it could happen within the next 10 years. But I do think within the next 20 years, it'll happen. Tommy Taylor says, thoughts, breaking story here. Actually, somebody just put that in my comments earlier. That, yes, MLB is moving the All-Star game from Atlanta, Georgia, because of the recent voting restrictions that were passed there. So I like it. I like it. Melinda Ortega says, happy Friday from Texas. Happy Friday to you, Melinda. Lawn Gnome says, glad to see I got home in time to catch the end of this. Are you going to stream the new Pokemon Snap game when it comes out at the end of the month? That comes out at the end of this month? Maybe. Maybe. I played that game a lot when I was a kid. I wonder if the new one is going to hold up, or is going to be just as enjoyable. I don't know. I will likely wait for reviews on that game, but if it's good, I'm sure I will be on Twitch playing it. I'm still trying to finish Persona 5. That game's too long. I think I've discussed this before, but if a game is 100 hours, I'm sorry, your game is too long. I know some people, they love that shit, but no. I top out at like 30 hours, but at some point I will beat Persona 5. Disco Elysium, whatever it is. I just got that. I'm not really understanding what's going on so far, but I feel like that's one I want to play through as well. I may do that on stream. But yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely a big gamer. I don't talk about it very often, but there's a lot of games that I would like to finish. All right. What other stories do I have here? This one's good. This right here. New Zealand raises the minimum wage to $20 an hour and increases taxes on the rich. Now, I saw this late. I did not get a chance to even read through it. Also, oh my God, this is just incredible. New Zealand, the country, experienced 26 deaths from COVID total. Oh my God. Now, of course, look, it's an island. It's a little easier, I think. Less people, island, to have a better outcome in COVID. But still, obviously, they took the right precautions, took the right steps to stop it. But this is great. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this translates into, say, American money or Canadian, but I guess we'll find out. So it's about, well, that doesn't help me. Let me see. I think it's similar though to I don't think it's that far off from what it is in American. All right, so 1 New Zealand dollar is equal to 70 cents American. All right, so let's see here. They raised it to 20. So assuming this is in New Zealand money, 1408 American. Okay, so that's like $15 an hour. So it really, if that's the translation, it really isn't that big of a deal. But I do want to see what the taxes raised are. So the new changes also impact the top 2% of earners in New Zealand, those on salaries over $180,000, who will now be taxed by 39%. Okay. I feel like it could be higher. So maybe this story sounded better than it actually is. Let me see in Canadian just so I get, my personal translation here. So 20 New Zealand is about 1770 Canadian. Okay, that's higher than ours. But there you go. Still, New Zealand would be a place I would love to go visit for sure. All right, what else do we got here? This, I laughed out loud. I may actually do a story on this. I just don't know what I would say because it's on the face of it. It's hilarious. Yoga is on the legislative docket in Alabama. It's been banned in schools since 1993. Yoga, banned in schools since 93. Conservative groups said yoga would promote Hinduism. Proposed law would mandate all poses have names in English. This is so absurd. Let's just watch this insanity.
Alabama's decades-old ban on yoga in public schools could stay in place just a little bit longer. A bill that would reverse that 1993 ban stalled during a Senate subcommittee hearing after 2 conservative groups shot it down. They argue that bringing yoga into classrooms, back into class, would promote Hinduism. Now, the proposed bill does address those issues. It would limit yoga sessions to just poses and stretches, with all of them going in English names. Also, chanting and mantras would not be allowed.
Imagine living under this much fear. Like, this is what all of this is about. Fear-mongering, just being scared all the time. Being so scared that you're scared of yoga. I don't get it. I don't. I was lucky enough to grow up in a family where I wouldn't say my family was, left wing or progressive, but objective, understanding, learning. So while I grew up in a very apolitical family, never talked about politics. It was always discussed as something that is very personal, which, looking back, that was dumb. I would have loved to talk about politics as a child and learn while growing up, but I basically self-taught from high school on. That said, I never had this mindset. I was lucky enough to not be in a conservative household. I don't know how people are so crazy. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't understand how you can be so effed in the head that you're scared of the names of yoga poses. It is amazing. It is amazing to me. But this is why I can't give good commentary on this. I just don't understand it. It's so wild to me. I would have to interview somebody who is from Alabama to explain to me why they are scared of yoga and yoga names. But whatever. All right. Hey, Christo. I just saw his chat pop up. Says, cheers to one of the nicest guys on YouTube. Christo, it's very kind of you. But you should be giving that to yourself because you're one of the nicest guys on YouTube. But thank you very much for the shout out. And of course, check out Christo's channel. You saw his name pop up and it's in the chat. Actually, I'll just bring it up here. Christo does great work. He's a Canadian historian, does fantastic stuff. Check out Christo. There you go. Check him out. Does great work. There you go. All right. Let me grab some other chats that may or may not have popped up. Mike Tyke, what a name, says capitalism requires that workers be treated like garbage. It's not an exception. It's a feature. Until the world comes to terms with that, we are screwed. I don't really disagree with you. I think you're right. Inherently, there's wage theft going on. But what I will say is when it comes to communicating this, people need to have a more measured approach, because if you just jump in, like if that's your first line, like I know this is a message, so it's not a critique of your comment, but in general, if you're talking to somebody whose mind you want to change or who you want to inform, don't start the conversation by saying that capitalism is garbage or requires that workers are treated with garbage. Even if it's true, you have to understand in terms of communicating that you have to ease people into the conversation. So honestly, I think Richard Wolff does fantastic videos explaining things very well, very succinctly. I would share one of his videos with people if you want to inform them on the issues with capitalism. He's I think the most effective Marxist communicator that I'm aware of. Maybe there are others, but I think Richard Wolff's pretty good. Miguel Sevilla says, if Biden doesn't run for a second term, who's your progressive pick to beat Kamala? P.S. You're my favorite Canadian. Well, thank you. If Biden doesn't run for a second term, who's your progressive pick to beat Kamala? Look, I'm always going to say Nina Turner because that's who I want. I think she would be fantastic. I'm not sure if she wins her seat in Congress. I'm not sure if she'd feel comfortable making the jump from Congress to, in 2 years, trying to primary Kamala Harris. But it'd be amazing, and I think she would have a great shot at doing it. I don't think it. Here's the reality: if you want to win liberals on board who basically only care about identity, not that there's anything wrong with understanding the role of identity and the experience it brings, but you're not going to be Kamala Harris with a white man. It's not happening. So if you're going to primary Kamala Harris, it has to be somebody that you can, first of all, of course, trust, someone that is a fighter, someone that's a great communicator, and someone that is not a white man. So I think Nina Turner would be a fantastic person to run against, try and primary Kamala Harris, but there may be others. but that's who comes to mind for me immediately. Just a fantastic communicator, somebody who is a fighter, somebody who stands up for the working class. Yeah, Nina all the way. Stephanie Chateau says, for covering yoga story, thanks. Oh, wow. Thank you. Did not think I would get a super chat because I covered that yoga story, but glad that I did. Thank you so much for the support. All right, let me see what else I got here. I think I'm almost near the end of the stories here. Man, there were a lot of things I did not do stories on that I could have. This. So here we go. Check this out.
On a call with the White House today with all the governors talking about the specifics of this package. And I was shocked by how much doesn't go into infrastructure. It goes into research and development. It goes into housing. And
I should probably give you proper context here. Okay, so this is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who, to be honest, I don't know anything about, but here she is discussing Joe Biden's infrastructure plan. Now, I have been critical that the plan does not go far enough because it doesn't go far enough. 2.25 trillion over 8 years is nothing, especially when you compare it to the COVID relief bill, which was 1.9 trillion over basically a year. Some provisions went to 2 years. So 2.25 for infrastructure over 8 years is almost laughable. But this sort of criticism is just batshit insane. So these are people complaining that Biden's plan is too crazy. And look at the reasoning that she uses here.
On a call with the White House today with all the governors talking about the specifics of this package. And I was shocked by how much doesn't go into infrastructure. It goes into research and development. It goes into housing and pipes and different initiatives, green energy. And it really is not an honest conversation we're having. On a call.
Oh, yes, not an honest conversation we're having right after saying that it doesn't even go to infrastructure. It goes to housing and pipes. What? Are you crazy? This shows you why you have to elect the most left-wing radical person you can possibly elect, because they will call you a socialist. They will call you crazy anyways. They're already called. I saw another. Actually, I may have it right here. I'm not sure if this is the one. No, it's not. But there's a Larry Kudlow clip, if I can find it, that calls Biden's infrastructure plan central planning. Calls it socialist. Yeah, rebuilding bridges. No one's ever done that before. And to be fair, in America, that is a radical idea, to actually have bridges not collapse on you. It's a very radical position to have. But, you know, pulling the view out just a little bit, you understand that rebuilding crumbling bridges or, you know, fixing the roads is not something that's completely, you know, insane. But here's Thomas Friedman thinks Biden asked for the moon. How can anybody possibly think there's too much in his infrastructure plan? But here you go.
Hey, Tom, I think what you just laid out is...
Why is it so low? Turn this up. Here we go.
Hey, Tom, I think what you just laid out is something that most people would agree with, particularly the idea that we have got to spend on bridges, on roads, on ports, on airports, and on broadband. We've been talking about that since the show started at 6 a.m. This is a long overdue investment, something that we've been hearing about for years and years, something that has never happened. But I think people would take issue with whether this bill does everything that you just described, whether this bill lays it out the right way, and whether you really need north of $2 trillion to make this investment happen.
Yeah, and I think that's all. I see this, you know, back as the government or Biden's opening bid. I think it will be whittled down and reshaped both by Republicans.
No. Here. Okay. It may be whittled down, but it shouldn't be, because not a single Republican is going to vote for it anyways. I was going to swear. Sometimes YouTube catches that. Why the hell would you capitulate to a party that is not going to vote for your plan anyways? It's just a maddening discussion. And I think some people in the media, these mainstream dipshits, I think they were surprised that the COVID relief bill wasn't whittled down, because they totally expected the 1.9 trillion to, be whittled down to something else, but it wasn't. So maybe there are some lessons there, and this won't be whittled down. But instead, what should actually happen is that the progressives in the House should push to make it much, much better. And I covered AOC on Maddow yesterday. And in fact, Rachel Maddow was the one that brought up. So it sounds like you people in the House, AOC and others, are going to try and challenge Biden on this bill and build it up from where it is right now. So you basically have both of these conversations happening in the mainstream press right now. Either, both that it may be built up and improved. AOC was discussing 10 trillion over 10 years as opposed to 2.25 trillion over 8 years. And here you have Thomas Friedman saying it's going to get smaller. Let's hope it's not the latter, but I want to hear what he has to finish off with here.
And I think by conservative Democrats, as it's debated more publicly. So he's asked for the moon, but I think there'll be and should be and needs to be a real debate about how we focus this and make sure we get the absolute bang for our buck. Because Becky, we're not going to get another chance to do another $2-3 trillion plan. So we really have to get this right.
He's right about one thing. There's not going to be another chance to do this. So to do it right, you have to invest more. There is not a single Democratic voter who is going to stay home or vote for a Republican because Joe Biden went too big. There is not a single person that will do that. The only people you will lose by not going far enough, I should say more clearly, the only people you will lose are progressives. You will lose them by not going big enough. You will lose people on the left by not going big enough. So you won't lose the center. You won't lose the so-called center, what the mainstream press calls a center, but you won't lose conservative voters. You won't lose typical Democratic voters. You're only going to lose people on the left, young people especially, that you need to come out if you go too small. So obviously here, the bill or the plan so far is not enough. And let's see what happens from here. Also, shout out Case Study QB. Even though your volume is low sometimes, it's still a great resource here to always see what's happening in the mainstream press. Oh yeah, I want to see if I can find that Larry Kudlow clip. I'm sure I can easily find it. His hair is getting in my eyes. There we go. Larry Kudlow. I don't know. Here we go. I got it. Look at that. Quick little search, and I found it.
About infrastructure.
Listen to this.
Look at, one way to look at this, Neil, this is about infrastructure, but so much of it is not. So much of it is just the largest expansion of government we will ever see, going back to the Great Society or maybe even the New Deal. The piece in the Wall Street Journal is worth reading.
Can we just pause for a second? He's comparing it to the New Deal as if that's a bad thing. It's nowhere near the New Deal. Nowhere near. But in his mind, if it is, isn't that a great thing? But he's discussing it as if that's a horrible thing.
It's a very long piece about this. You basically, in the name of infrastructure, going to go into the Green New Deal, which will essentially take out fossil fuel energy, which will be a tremendous job loser, prosperity killer, and make us uncompetitive.
Larry Kudlow will be dead by the time the real climate change catastrophes start hitting. I mean, they already are hitting, but he doesn't have to be on this earth for much longer. So, yeah. Anyways, you know what I'm saying.
Worldwide. You're also going to go into social policy. You were mentioning that to the congressman. Look, you've got stuff in here. It's not just free community colleges. It's child care. It's child tax credits. It's dependent credits. This is heading for universal basic income. Already, we are told that unemployment insurance and the...
So far, it sounds great, actually. He's selling me on the bill.
Other assistance measures
absurd.
are going to be made permanent. The checks, for example, will be made permanent from the last stimulus package. So this is a huge expansion. The government planners will be in the driver's seat. And I just want to raise one other point, Neil. Mr. Garamendi mentioned broadband, and I concur with him. We've got to build out broadband. This was an area that we did at the National Economic Council, 5G, broadband, and so forth. But look, Neil, broadband is owned privately, not by the federal government. In fact, private ownership of all infrastructure is 65%. The federal government is only 5%. So take this through. You can't shoot straight on this. They're going to raise the corporate tax. They're going to raise...
By the way, I haven't seen the broadband plan. I don't think it's publicly owned. If it is, that's awesome. This has been... There's several stories on this. It's going to be impossible to search this up because I forget what the city is. But there's... I think several cities now that have publicly owned a high-speed internet, and it costs less, it performs better. It's a win-win for everybody, except I guess for wealthy executives at cable companies. But if that's actually Biden's plan, which I don't know if it is, and I don't think it is, but that would be fantastic. But here again, they're talking about it as if that's a negative.
Raise the minimum tax. They're going to raise the overseas tax. They're going to raise the capital gains tax, which is all anti-investment. And then they're going to have a subsidy for broadband, which will only cover a tiny piece of it. Why not have the tax rates low? Why not let America be competitive at home and abroad? Why use some government-targeted subsidies? I mean, it's like the gang who can't shoot straight. On the one hand, they're taking their profits away by higher taxes. And
taking their profits, yes. If there's one problem that America has, corporations not making enough profit. That's the problem. This shit. Chattanooga, Tennessee, that's the one. There you go. Yes, a lot of replies here. Yes, Chattanooga, Tennessee is that is the one that has public broadband, and it works fantastically. If you look it up, I read a story on that I think a couple years ago now, but it does very well. Anyways, yeah, this whole clip just absurd. What else we got here? This So I have not looked further into this. I'm just going to take this I'm going to assume this person is right, that this is what was spoken, because I did not watch the clip myself. But with that caveat, in opening, prosecutors say that when an EMT who was a bystander approached to try to check George Floyd's pulse and render aid, Chauvin refused her and pointed his mace at her. So Derek Chauvin, the officer who killed George Floyd, threatened to mace an EMT who went to help George Floyd. And in fact, my understanding is a 911 dispatcher called the cops on the cops. I think I may have saved the wrong tweet there, but that was another piece of it as well. That somebody who was on the phone, somebody who called 911, I believe this is how it went, discuss what was happening, and then the 911 dispatcher actually called the cops on the cops that were there holding George Floyd down. So again, just showing you, I mean, we're going to keep hearing more and more as this trial goes on. I've only seen bits and pieces. I kind of want to wait until the end, see the conclusions and what all comes from it. But there have been new stories coming out every day about or more details coming out every day about what went on. And it's just the bigger picture that we have, or the more context that we're given for that situation or for that event, the worse, if possible, the worse it looks on the officers there. All right. What else? I think that's it. I went through a lot. Man, there we go. Let me grab some chats if there are any super chats left, and then I'll grab some normie chats, and then we'll get going. All right, I think I tapped out the super chats. Let me grab some normie chats here. Let's see. I know there's a bit of a delay, so if people, have a question or comment, this part of the video is not getting to you for another minute. But I'm looking up here through the chat and seeing what people have been saying. George Furman says the GOP is full of old dinosaurs that must be trashed, if not by us, by time ASAP. Crucial Speak says, well, it is about time we had a new deal anyway, and it needs to be more. It needs to be more. Yes, the New Deal made this country. Also, COVID update, because last week, remember I told you that I was exposed to COVID. Building manager sent somebody into our suites, into our apartments that had COVID, and told us afterward. Apparently they didn't test the person that came in to do some maintenance work in our place, and this person was here for 20 minutes. Luckily, they were wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask. It's now been, I think, 10 days. 10 days. So far, so good. Though, I mean, every single day, I've been checking my temperature. Like, I'm one of these people where I can get a little too crazy about things. If I know I could be sick, then I'm going to be, I'm going to go over and above. At the same time, I kind of don't want to go and get a test unless I have a symptom, because I'm almost afraid of exposing myself while getting tested. But hopefully I am fine. But man, the cases in Ontario keep exploding every day. It's getting worse and worse. And we're in another shutdown now. Winston says, are you streaming games Sunday? So I can't promise anything because my life is bonkers. I have a child now, so it can be hard to plan things. But yes, my intention is to stream games on Sunday. So probably Sunday night, Sunday evening, Sunday night. Once the kid is to bed, then I will jump on. Celeste sends a message saying, you thought you'd see the last of me. Too bad. Y'all can't get rid of me. You crack me up, Celeste. What else here? Mask is paramount. Yep. Tyler says, David, do you talk to Kyle Kalinske regularly? I would say not on a regular basis, but yeah, we chat from time to time. I like Kyle. He does great work. All right. Jessica says, I've noticed there was no talk of climate change since Biden became president in the news world. I wouldn't say that's exactly true. Usually when we're talking about climate change, it's because some climate event happened. Either a crazy hurricane or flooding or forest fire or something. That's usually what triggers that discussion as a reminder of, hey, we have to do something about this. So I think that's kind of maybe why you haven't heard as much about climate change, because, I mean, then again, there has been flooding in certain, I don't know, there's always these climate events going on. But, some hit bigger than others. So I think that's maybe the reason why you haven't heard a lot recently about climate change. But I don't think it's because Biden is president. And climate change is part of the infrastructure plan, though does not go anywhere near what is necessary. But it has been mentioned in the news because of that. But yeah, there hasn't been, I guess, a big discussion of it since he's taken office. Victoria B says, I've been tested in Mississauga. I drove into the hospital parking garage and rolled my mask window down. And rolled my window down. The nurse had on mask, gown, gloves, and giant clear face shield. Yeah, if I was going to get tested, I would go there. I think that may be the only drive-in testing facility that is still in the Toronto area. So yeah, if I felt a symptom, I would do that. I just wonder, there has to be a percentage of people that have gotten COVID while getting tested, right? Like, you're in a line with people that all have symptoms. Most of them have symptoms. Some of them definitely have it. Yeah, that's what's made me a little wary of getting tested. Winston says, did you see Peterson endorse an Alberta education plan? No. Peterson? You mean Jordan Peterson? I did not see this. Volcanic eruption in Iceland? Yes. Though I wouldn't really call that a climate event. But some great footage coming from that. All right. Probably going to jump off here in just a second. Just scrolling up, seeing if anything catches my eye. Do you plan to cover Doug Ford more? I covered him yesterday. Go watch that video. I'll cover him when I do. I mean, I could have a story every day about Doug Ford, but it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense considering that's not really what I do. But I tend to do one Canadian story a week. This week I kind of did 1.5 because I did a story also about COVID scientists warning greedy countries, which include Canada, about the need to vaccinate everybody, which means waiving the IP having the IP waiver or the IP rights waived, so that you can mass produce the vaccinations for all countries. So I count that as a 0.5, half Canadian video. But every week I do at least one Canadian story. I think it's important to, hit those issues. But of course, there's just more going on in general in the U.S. And I've always my entry point into politics was through the U.S. So that's always been my focus. All right, time to get back to my little baby. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons. Just all the buttons you see on screen, hit those buttons. The bell icon, hit the bell icon. We meaning independent media, need help because our videos are, as I discussed earlier, not suggested on other content or very rarely suggested on other content. So the only way we really get into your phones, your screens is if when we put a video up. And the best way to know is to subscribe and hit the bell icon. And I don't put up that much content, so it's not going to be annoying to you. I put up at most 2 videos a day. So you'll get 2 notifications a day. Not a big deal. Hit the bell icon, support the show, and if you can also help financially, of course, hit the join on YouTube or the Patreon page, of course. There's the link to it. Link's also below the video. And also, super chats have helped throughout this entire thing as well. Going to do sometimes I miss super chats, just double check. I missed one. There you go. Brett Taylor says, thanks, David. Thank you, Brett. Thank you for your very generous super chat. All right. So there you go. Help support the show. And thank you all for showing up again. And yes, on Twitch. Twitch link is below the video. My intention is to stream on Sunday night. So go follow me on there to know when I go live there as well. All right. See you all later. And have a great weekend. Goodbye.